This is the second part of the story of Brother Andrew called God's Smuggler. Sometimes, I wonder why we make it so hard for people to go in the mission field. Time is getting so short, and there are people that are unsaved, people are dying and they don't know Jesus. And yet we keep people in their hometowns until they have the money or the finances to go. Well, I don't know. There are some, like World Evangelization Crusade, that they go by faith. Youth with a Mission, the one the Lord called me to, Youth with a Mission YWAM, we went by faith. And it was a very special time. It was we were training to learn to listen to God, to obey the Holy Spirit, and to trust Him, not to ask for money from people, which I see again and again in our churches. Just because people want to go on the mission field, they called, but the group that is over them says you need to have this amount of money before you can leave. But why not just go? Be part of a mission there. Be part of a ministry anywhere in the world. But do the job God's called you to do. So I don't know whether this is going to help or hinder. But I'm jumping forward. Remember in the last story, part of the story was went to Indonesia. And this part is about the pain that he received. He's not a Christian yet, and this is all gearing toward that. So here we go. I tried to pretend the same bravado on this mission that I had felt on earlier ones. I wore my yellow straw hat as I had before. I shouted as loud. I cursed. I moved forward with my company day after day. But even my defiance seemed to have deserted me. And then one morning a bullet smashed through my ankle, and I was out of the war. It happened so suddenly, and at first so painlessly, that I didn't know what had happened. We'd walked into an ambush. The enemy was on 3 sides of us, and many times our strength. Why I was shot in the ankle and not in my straw hat, I don't know. But as I was running, I suddenly fell. I knew I had not stumbled, but I couldn't get up. And then I saw that my right combat boot had 2 holes in it. Blood was coming out of both of them. "I'm hit," I called, not excited. It was simply a fact, and I stated it as such. A buddy rolled me into a ditch out of sight. At first, medics came with a stretcher. They put me on it and began moving me out. Crouching low in the ditch, I still had on my yellow hat and refused to take it off even while it drew fire. A bullet once went through the crown. I just didn't care. Hours later, still wearing my yellow straw hat, I was stretched out on an operating table in the evacuation hospital. It took 2.5 hours to sew up the foot. I heard the doctors discussing whether or not to amputate. The nurse asked me to take the hat off, but I refused. "Don't you know what that is?" the doctor asked the nurse. "That's the unit symbol. These are the boys who got smart and lost their minds." But I hadn't. That was the final irony, the final failure. I hadn't even managed to get my brains blown out, just a foot. Somehow, in all my furious self-destructiveness, I had never considered this possibility. I had always seen myself going out in a blaze of contempt for the whole human farce. But to live, and crippled, that was the meanest fate of all. My great adventure had failed. Worse, I was 20 years old, and I discovered that there was no real adventure anywhere in the world. Chapter 3. I lay on the hospital bed, my right leg so encased in plaster that I could scarcely move. At first I had visitors from my unit, but the others were getting themselves killed or wounded too, and after all, life was moving on. The doctors told me I would never walk without a cane. It was better not to think about these things. Bit by bit, my buddies stopped coming. But not before they had accomplished 2 things that were to alter events for me. The first was to mail a letter I had never intended mailing. It was to Thyle, my girlfriend. I'd picked up an odd habit. Whenever I came back from a late night on the town or a battle that left me feeling especially dirty, I would write to Thyle. I would put down on the paper all the filthy, disgusting things I had seen and done, things I could never really share with anyone. Then I would burn it. Just before I went into my last battle, I had started such a letter to Thyle and had left it unfinished in my barracks bag. Well, after I was hit, a helpful buddy went through my bag for personal items before turning it in. And being a resourceful kind of fellow, he looked up Thyle's name in my address book and mailed it. You could see he thought he'd done something extra nice. Man, he teased me when he visited me in the hospital, I've never seen such a list of names. What do? Write to every family in Holland that has a pretty girl? It took me half an hour to find the last name that went with Thyle. You better be careful, man. This could start another war. Horror must have shown in my face because he suddenly jumped out of his chair. Gee, Andy, I didn't realize it still hurt so bad, and here I am making lousy jokes. I'll come back when you feel better. For days I tried to remember what I had written in that wretched letter. As near as I could recall, it began, Dearest Thyle, I'm so lonely tonight. I wish you were here. I wish I could look right into your eyes as I say all these things and know that you still liked me, or at least didn't condemn me. You wrote me once that I should pray. Well, I haven't. Instead, I curse. I know words I never even heard in Holland. I tell filthy jokes. The worse I feel, the harder I get. The guy's laughing. I'm not the person you think I am. This war used to bother me, but it doesn't anymore. When I see dead people, I shrug. People we've killed, not just soldiers, but ordinary working men, women, and children. I have no desire for God. I don't want to pray. Instead of going to church, I go to the pub and drink until I don't give a hoot. And there was more, much, much more. I lay in agony in that hospital ward, trying to remember just what, in my drunken fog, I had written. Well, there was one friend I could say goodbye to. The trouble was, Thyle wasn't just one friend. She was the best friend I'd ever had, and I'd wanted her to be so very much more. I thrashed about on the narrow bed. What part of me could move? And I was trying to shut out the picture of Thyle reading that letter. And as I flung out my arm, my hand fell on the book. That was the second thing the boys had done for me. They'd found my mother's little Bible in the bottom of the duffel bag. It was Jan Swart who brought it to me, leaving it rather shyly on the bedside table just before he left. This book was in your things, he said. I didn't know if you wanted it. I said thanks, but I didn't pick it up. I doubt if I ever would have, except for the nuns. The hospital to which I had been assigned was run by Franciscan sisters, and Sue fell in love with every one of them. From dawn until midnight they were busy in their wards, cleaning bedpans, swabbing wounds, writing letters for us, laughing, singing. I never once heard them complain. One day I asked the nun who came to bathe me how it was that she and the other sisters were always so cheerful. Why, Andrew, you ought to know the answer to that. A good Dutch boy like you, it's the love of Christ. When she said it, her eyes sparkled, and I knew without question that for her this was the whole answer. She could have talked all afternoon and said no more. But you're teasing me, aren't you, she said, wrapping the well-worn little Bible, where it still lay on the bedside table. You've got the answer right here. So now when my restless hand struck against it, I picked it up. In the 2.5 years since my mother had given it to me, I had never once opened it. But I thought about the sisters, their joy, their tranquility. You've got the answer right here. I propped the little book on my chest, and with a desultory finger I moved the pages backward until I got to Genesis 1:1. I read the story of creation and of the entrance of sin into the world. It didn't seem nearly as far-fetched to me now as it had when our schoolteacher read aloud a chapter each afternoon while outside canals wanted to be jumped. I read on, skipping whole portions, flipping through to get to the story again. At last, many days later, I came to the New Testament. Lying there encased in autographed, covered plaster, I read straight through the Gospels, catching dimly their terrible significance. Could all this really be true? While I was in the middle of the Gospel according to St. John, a letter was delivered. The handwritten on the envelope was familiar. Thyle. With trembling hands I tore it open. Dearest Andy, I read. Dearest, the word I had written so many times to her, but never in a letter intended to be mailed. Dearest Andy, I have here a letter from a boy who thinks his heart has turned hard, but his heart is breaking, and he's shown a little of that heartbreak to me, and I'm proud that he has. Then followed, when her sheer relief, I could read again. Of all things, a study outline of the Bible. This was the only place, Thyle wrote, where human heartbreak could be understood in terms of God's love. They were wonderful weeks that followed, weeks of reading the Bible together on opposite sides of the earth. I filled page after page with questions, and Thyle went to her pastor and her library and the depths of her own heart to find the answers. But as the months passed in the hospital, as my cast came off bit by bit, and I saw the ugly shrunken leg and remembered the joys of running that would never be mine again, I found myself holding on to a hard core of resentment, which was just the opposite of the joy Thyle and my Franciscan nuns were talking about. As soon as I was ambulatory, I don't know how you say that in America, I started leaving the hospital every evening after dinner to hobble painfully to the nearest pub and drink myself into oblivion. The nuns never spoke about it, at least not directly. But on the day before I was to be shipped home, my favorite nun, Sister Patrice, pulled a chair up to my bed. "Andy, I have a story to tell you. Do you know how natives catch monkeys out in the forest?" My face lit up, the thought of a monkey story. "No, tell me." "Well, you see, the natives know that a monkey will never let go of something he wants, even if it means losing his freedom. So here's what they do. They take a coconut and make a hole in one end, just big enough for a monkey's paw to slip through. Then they drop a pebble into the hole and wait in the bushes with a net. Sooner or later, a curious old fellow will come along. He'll pick up that coconut shell and rattle it. He'll peer inside, and then at last he'll slip his paw into the hole and feel around until he gets hold of that pebble. But when he tries to bring it out, he finds that he cannot get the paw through the hole without letting go. And Andy, that monkey, will never let go of what he thinks is a prize. It's the easiest thing in the world to catch a fellow who acts like that." Sister Patrice got up and put the chair back by the table. She paused for a moment and looked me straight in the eye. "Are you holding on to something, Andrew? Something that's keeping you from your freedom?" And then she was gone. I knew perfectly well what she meant. I also knew her sermon wasn't for me. The next day was going to be a great one, on 2 counts. It was my 21st birthday, and it was the day the hospital ship sailed for home. To celebrate, I called together all the survivors who could still walk or limp of the company I had come to Indonesia with 3 years earlier. There were 8 of us. We had a grand time. We got roaring, shouting, belligerently drunk. Chapter 4. One stormy night. Andrew Getcher ran across the little bridge and threw her arms around me. My sister, she turned and shouted behind her, "Margie, go find Papa. Tell him Andy's home." In an instant, the tiny front garden was crowded. Martia ran to kiss me before hurrying back to fetch Papa. Ben was there and his fiancée. They'd waited to get married, they told me, until I could be at the wedding. Ari, Geltje's new husband, joined us. My young brother Cornelius shook my hand gravely. He couldn't keep his eyes off my cane, and I knew he was wondering just how badly hurt I was. In the midst of hugs and kisses, Papa came shuffling around the house, a bit lame himself now. His brown eyes were moist. "Andrew, boy, good to have you home." Papa's voice was as loud as ever. "When you feel like it, Andrew," Martia said after the first greetings were over, "I'll take you out to Mama's grave." I said that I would like to go right then. The graveyard was just 500 yards from our home, but to walk even that distance, I had to borrow Papa's bicycle, throw my bad leg over the seat, and push myself along, half riding and half walking. "It's really pretty bad then?" Martia asked. "They don't think I'll ever walk right again." The ground had not yet fully settled on Mama's grave. There were fresh flowers in a little red vase stuck into the soil. After a while, Martia and I walked home in silence. That night, though, after it was dark, I announced that I thought I would try taking a walk. No one offered to go with me. Each person knew what I wanted to do. I got out the bicycle again and hopped and rolled up the street. The cemetery lay in full moonlight, and it was easy to find the grave. I sat down on the ground and said my last words to my mother. I'm back, Mama. It seemed natural talking to her. I did read your Bible, Mama. Not at first, but I did read it. There was a long silence. Mama, what I'm going to do now? I can't walk 100 yards without the pain making me stop. You know I'm no good at smithing. There's not a rehabilitation center at the hospital, but what can I learn there? I feel so useless, Mama, and guilty for the life I led out there. Answer me, Mama, what should I do? But no answer came. The cold moonlight flowed over me and the grave and the rest of us there in that cemetery, the dead and the half-dead. After half an hour, I gave up trying to reach into the past, and I wheeled myself home. Gelja was at the kitchen table sewing. We talked about where you could sleep, Andrew, she said, not looking up. Do you think you could make it up the ladder? I looked at the hole in the ceiling above my head, and I made an assault on that ladder. I climbed one ring at a time, putting my good foot up, hauling the other after it. The pain made perspiration stand out on my forehead, but I turned my head so the others didn't see. My old bed was waiting for me, clean sheets turned down invitingly. I lay for a long time staring at the sloping ceiling, and at last, far too close to tears for a 20-year-old man, I fell asleep wondering what had happened to my great adventure. The next morning, taking only my cane, I hobbled out to get reacquainted with the village. The people I met were polite, but also seemed embarrassed. They would look uncomfortably at my uniform, then at my foot. Did you hurt yourself out there in the East Indies or something? They asked. Obviously the war was unpopular in Holland, as I suppose lost wars always are. It was clear by now that Indonesia would soon be independent, and so it was easiest to pretend that we'd always intended it that way. Returning veterans only made it difficult. For an odd reason I couldn't understand, the house where I was headed was the Westers. I found them at home and accepted with pleasure their invitation to a cup of coffee. The Westers, remember, are the Christian couple who were asking Andrew to pray while he was going to Indonesia. We sat around the kitchen table while Mr. Wester asked me about Sukarno and the communists, and at last a more personal question. Did you find that adventure you were looking for, Andy? I looked down at the floor. Not really, I said. Well, he said, we'll just have to keep praying. For adventure? For me? I felt the angry flush climbing up the back of my neck. Sure, I'm a natural for adventure now. When it calls, I'll limp right out to meet it. Immediately I was ashamed. What had made me answer like that? I left them feeling I'd spoiled a friendship. Another person I'd been eager to see was Keys. I found him at home, upstairs in his room, bent over a large pile of books. After a rather strained greeting, I picked up one of the books and was amazed to find that it was a theological treatise. What's this? I asked. Keys took the book from my hands. I've decided what I'm going to do with my life. You're lucky. What is it? I asked, hardly believing the answer I knew it was going to give me. I want to go into the ministry. Pastor Vanderhoop is helping me. Keys made me squirm, and I got out of there just as soon as I politely could. The Veterans Hospital at Dawn was an enormous complex of treatment centers, dormitories, and rehabilitation units, but its chief quality was boredom. I disliked the exercises, I loathed the trade school, but the thing I hated most was the occupational therapy. So he was smoking 3 packs a day. Thyle was trying to help him. He didn't like the rehabilitation place. It was just like using the pottery. Remember the pottery wheel? You put the clay on the pottery wheel and try and shape it. And then he goes on here. It was 2 months before anyone spoke about religion to me again, and then it wasn't Thyle, but another pretty girl. It was mid-morning on a rather blustery day in September 1949. We were sitting on our beds reading and writing letters after morning exercises when the nurse came in to announce a visitor. I paid no attention until I heard a low whistle rise to the lips of 20 boys. I glanced up. Standing in the doorway, embarrassed and yet pleased, was a striking blonde. Not bad, my next bed neighbor, Pierre whispered. I won't take much of your time, the girl began. I just want to ask you all to join us at our tent meeting tonight. There will be lots of refreshments. What kind? Someone shouted. And the bus will leave here at 7 o'clock, and I hope you can all come. The boys burst into wild, exaggerated applause with shouts of encore, encore, as the girl retreated. But when 7 o'clock came, every one of us was waiting in the foyer, clean, scrubbed, hair stiff with brilliantine. Pierre and I were first in line. We were happy, not only because of the night away from the hospital, but also because Pierre had slipped down to the village and come back with our answer to the question of what refreshments would be served. By the time the bus arrived at the tent grounds, the bottle was half empty. We took seats in the extreme rear of the tent and finished the rest of it. Most of the boys thought our antics were funny. The people holding the revival service did not. Finally, a funny-looking man with a thin face and deep-set eyes, the kind of person I disliked on sight, took the podium and announced that there were 2 people in the congregation who were bound by powers they couldn't control. And then, closing his eyes, he began a long, impassioned prayer for the health of our more immortal souls. We choked back our laughter till our throats ached from the effort. But when at last, in a pious sing-song, he called us our brethren over whom foreign spirits have gained influence, we could hold it in no longer. We howled with laughter. We whooped with laughter, and seeing that further prayer was impossible, the man told the choir to sing. The song they chose was, Let My People Go. Soon the whole congregation was joining in on the refrain, Let my people go. Again and again the words swelled up under the big tent. The meeting ended. The vets trooped out to the waiting bus. But still inside my head the words sang on, Let them go. Let me go. It's foolish, of course, to suggest that a simple song, a song overheard, not even sung, could become a prayer, and that God would honor it. And yet the very next day, during dreaded occupational class, a strange thing happened. In spite of the fact that I had a king-size hangover, I could do nothing wrong at my wheel. I sat down and slapped a hunk of gray clay on my potter's wheel, then moved it toward the center while my foot worked slowly. A vase rose under my fingers. Incredulous, I threw another glob of clay onto the wheel. Once again the shape rose effortlessly, matching the form I held in my hand, in my mind. Later that day, something even more unsettling happened. And if you want to know what happened next, you'll have to tune in the next time I read the story. God bless you. Remember that we've all probably got something that we're holding on to, and God can't get through until we clear it out of us, our life, our circumstances, even our memories. Are you willing to let them go? I do hope so. God bless.